Hello friends out there in YouTube, this is Robert Hamm here, and today we're talking about stock photography, and this is kind of an important conversation to have. We're just going to take a couple of minutes. I'm actually going to answer a question from a viewer named Chadley, which was in reference to some information I'd put out on a video about the V20, which was why a really great camera is important and why I didn't think that the V20 had the best camera for that. And here it is. One thing that's very popular nowadays is stock photography, and that is taking pictures, editing photos, and then uploading them to a site that then sells your work for you. And that allows for quite a bit of collaboration with the site and allows for quite a bit of exposure. Of course, there's different royalties that are paid based on the services that are there, but the idea is take a photo, edit a photo, and then upload the photo to the service. Now there are a couple of sites that you can work with in this kind of a workflow, but the nuts and bolts are what we're here to talk about today. And this really is just a primer. There's way more information than what I'm going to share with you today, but this is a great place to start. If you have any questions, of course, leave them down below. I'm not going to be cutting in and out to a bunch of pretty video clips or anything. I'm just going to be talking with you and sharing my information about how to get started. So if you're looking for a nice lot of B-rolls and everything else like that, check out a different video. If you learn better with from doing rather than learning, then either follow along with me or just keep your search up for getting started in stock photography. That's a great keyword selector to use. Okay, so we're going to get in it. The first thing you need to know about stock photography is that your images will be used all over the internet. They usually will not be used with an accreditation to you directly, but to the site for which you sell them through, such as iStockPhoto or Adobe Stock. Those are a couple of great places to start. And what that means is that your images can pop up on websites and be seen by many people, so they need to be excellent images. Many people would think then that you would need to have a very expensive camera and rig and editing system set up in order to go ahead and even enter a field like this. But the reality is that's not so. Most of the time, businesses want casual shots that are commiserate with what the business does, such as maybe some people eating salad at a fruit bar, or having fun at the beach, or anything you can think of, executives in an elevator. Any day-to-day thing that you may feel is mundane is important when it comes to stock photography. So there's a key component of the type of camera that you're going to need to carry around with you, is that it needs to be one that's good as well as portable, because if it's not, then you're going to be carrying around something that you may forget or you may leave at home on some day and you miss a really great shot. So that's why the first thing we talk about is the camera, and I suggest using a cell phone. And many people look at me and they think that I'm crazy when I say this, but the reality is, what other device do you carry that has usually an adequate, if not excellent, camera on it, that also has the ability to edit an image that you take and then has its own mobile connection that will allow you to upload the image? I can't think of anything other than a cell phone. Now, the reason the cell phone is important is because it contains all those three things in a form factor that sticks with you, that you take with you everywhere, which means you can shoot stock photography on your phone. Now, there is some truth. If you're shooting things like textures, you're going to have to be very careful with that. If you're shooting things like landscapes, you're going to have to be very careful with that. You're going to want to definitely avoid low light situations. You're definitely going to want to make sure that you're taking images mostly outdoors or in exceptionally well-lit situations, or taking images that are more artistic that you can then manipulate to have a specific effect that you want to give. So we've talked so far about the camera, but let's not forget, many cameras now have apps that allow you to upload images from your camera to your phone. So whether or not you want to use your phone as the main camera or not, the phone is a great interface in a mobile workflow because it has an always-on data connection that you can send images out. So that's important. The second thing is your content. So now that you've kind of got an idea of how you can get images, maybe people standing in line at a grocery store, you can just click that with your cell phone. And the next thing to do is to edit those images. your images need to be in excellent quality. They have to look good. They don't need to be grainy or have a lot of noise. And some things that you can use to edit those images on your phone are things like Lightroom or Adobe Fix, or you can use Vesco Cam, which is a good one. You can use Snapseed. These are all image editing apps that you can download to your phone, whether it's Android or iOS, and use those apps to manipulate the actual image, and then take that image and save that new manipulated image as a brand new image to upload. Most of the time, however, you're not going to want to stylize your images all too often. Depending on what you're taking a picture of, you're going to want it to be as clean as possible, and that means that there's not a lot of interpretation left up to the image. For example, if you start producing many black and white images, which would be a great place to start, you have to realize that a client may be searching for a particular kind of image, and they may want it in color. And so if all you're producing is black and white, then you're not giving them the opportunity to choose your work in a color format. So that also gets into kind of like thinking about how you're going to edit your images. And that also means that you should begin thinking about some kind of aesthetic and a kind of look that you're going for. Me, I really enjoy photographing textures. Let me explain what that means. I like to photograph repeating patterns in fabric. I like to photograph repeating natural patterns in wood, repeating natural patterns in brick, in water, in leaves. These are things that can then be used very elegantly by websites and companies as backgrounds, as special accent colors and textures. So it's not that you should think about shooting or photographing one particular kind of thing. It's more that you should think about a particular category of subject where you can then photograph multiple things within that category. Okay, so now let's recap a second. We talked about a camera. We talked about whether we use our phone or whether we use a camera that can upload images to the phone. We want to be able to get those images online easily. And we're talking about this workflow as specific to a mobile workflow. Okay, so that's why the phone's important. Obviously, you could just as easily go home and buy a computer, a camera, a rig, and have a home office and work out of there. But many people won't have that opportunity. So the cell phone might be the $600 or $700 piece of hardware that you carry in your pocket that can perform all these tasks for you, which is why we're talking about this here. So I don't want to see a lot of comments down below that talk about why you're not using a Mac or why you're not using this. It's because we're not talking about that. We're talking about a mobile workflow. And if I see those comments, I'll troll you on them because I'll know you didn't even watch the video far enough to understand I'm talking about a mobile workflow here. So finally, what we're going to want to do is understand how we work as a contributor to these websites. Generally speaking, you will have to go on to the website, specifically like Adobe Stock Photo, and scroll all the way down to the very bottom, the bottom footer of the page, in little tiny letters, and it'll say, become a contributor, or sell images. And you need to look for that kind of information or that kind of link on all of the websites, because the majority of the website is going to be dedicated to selling work. The other part of the website is not really going to have much information other than a small link that gets you to the contributors page. Same thing with iStock Photo, same thing with 123 Free Photo. There's a couple of different ones out there, but just Google it, you'll find it. You'll also begin to find out pretty quick that Getty Images owns the majority of the stock photos that, or at least owns the majority of the reach of the stock photography networks. They own things like Getty owns iStock, Photos Plus, Photos. They don't own Photos.net. They own a couple of several different ones, and depending on what you do, you will need to apply to each individual branch separately in order to have an account and sell there. At some point in time, your image could be featured on Getty Images, but Getty Images is the images that they want to feature mainly happen to be news and political related kind of images. So once you figure out where to go to sign up to be a contributor, you then have to actually complete that entire process. And by that, you have to, in most cases, take a test. You have to read all of their information guidelines and then take a competency test to whether or not you understand their rules and regulations. And some of them can be pretty difficult. For example, if you're sitting at that fruit bar taking a picture of the people next to you eating a salad, can you sell that photo? If you think you can right away, you're wrong. Anything that's going to be used for a commercial endeavor, you need to have a location release if it's not a public space. And if it is a public space, even like a national park, you may need to have a location release there. And if it's going to have images of people in it that can recognize themselves, you need to have a personal release for each of the persons located in the photo. That means, unless you're hiring models, you're going to need to be able to have a way or a system set up so that you can get pictures of people in such a way that they can either not be readily identified, such as crowds of masses, or you have to get their release. And if you're shooting inside of what would be a private establishment, like a Walmart, even though it's publicly owned, or a publicly traded company, it's a business invitee. If you go in there, take pictures to start selling them, you really don't have the right to sell them because you're taking pictures inside of a location. You would need a commercial release for that. Also, if you're taking pictures inside of that restaurant like we were talking about, you need a location release for that. So the test that you take has a lot to do with those variables and that goes through. Okay, so we talked about the lens, all right, being the camera. Okay, we talked about editing, what kind of style you wanted to go through. We talked about finding a site that you want to be a contributor for, such as iStock, which is probably one of the largest, or Adobe Stock Photo. And we've also talked about whether or not you're allowed to sell images or not. That's very important. And that last part that we're going to round this whole thing out with is your documentation. You're going to need to find a workflow that you can get location releases in if you wish to sell this stuff in order to be able to upload it. And that workflow can either include documents that are on your phone that you can sign with your finger, like PDF style, with like Adobe EchoSign, or maybe like on the Note 5 or something like that, they have a stylus that you're going to be able to sign, or just have the ability for you to use the touchscreen to sign. And you're going to have the ability also on that paper to take a picture of the person and their face so that you can see the likeness of the person that's signing with their information as well as the likeness of that person in the photo. That then becomes one document. So if you have trouble making or putting those things together, I'm sure that there are some resources out there. I don't particularly know of any. What I do is I have a couple of PDF files that are saved on my OneDrive that I already have, like places that I can put a photo and then a likeness, like for a location release, a picture of the location, and then all of my location release information. You can find that by just easily Googling location release information. You can put it on there, and then you'll be able to very easily, once you take these photos, click the information, fill it in using a PDF reader or PDF fill program like Adobe EchoSign or something, add an image to it, right? And then go ahead and save that as one PDF document, and then you can email it to everybody that's involved. Then you have that information saved as well to upload to the stock photography site of your choice. Now, that's a lot of a workflow, which is why I like shooting and photographing textures for stock photography websites, because I don't really need a location release because there's nothing that identifies a location, and I don't need a person release because there's nobody in there. Alright guys, this has been a very quick 14-minute primer. This is a very basic rundown of what you need to know if you're going to get started with stock photography. There's no reason that you shouldn't do so with your cell phone. You can shoot textures and things like that with your cell phone all day long. In fact, you can do all kinds of nice portraiture with it. There's no reason to not go ahead and get something like this going as an entrepreneur, as that kind of business focused features. It's something that you can do right now sitting at your house in your home, and images of yourself and your family and your friends would be a great place or easy place to start if you wanted to get pictures of people eating or just kind of interacting in a way to kind of start your look or begin to gain that aesthetic. Guys, I'm Robert Hamm with RobertHammPhotography.com. You can catch me over on Instagram, and you can find me over here on Twitter at RobHammPhoto. You can find me on both Facebook and YouTube at /Robert Hamm Photography. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, smash that like button, and please don't forget to subscribe. And as always, take it easy, my friends.